costly using the commercial revenue, and these are some of the things that we're looking into. The other issue that we're going to be looking into in the next 3 years is the stringent regulations that do not allow us the flexibility and agility required to be competitive. I'll make an example. If ever we need to do a deal to make sure that we're competitive and we bring more revenue and also in line where we want to take the SABC, we are not able to do that because, first of all, the turnaround times, it will take you anything between 3 to 6 months. And by that time, the potential partners would not have had the required interest in that. All of the plans that the COO is going to talk about, as well as the CFO, are underpinned by the need to urgently recapitalize the SABC. And the Minister has spoken at length on this, so I'm not going to really belabor the point. And the last point that I would like to make is that we are a team that is facing great difficulties at the SABC. We're running an organization where we cannot necessarily guarantee the health and safety of our employees. As we speak from an occupational health and safety point of view, we're leading a group of employees who are committed but who are in a building that has not been maintained for years. And part of the requirement of that funding would be to invest in maintaining and upgrading all of those broadcast critical facilities that we have. The second point is we have been able to move as much as we can to ensure that the organization is sustainable. And we're really happy with the progress that is made in terms of ensuring that there could be capital injection at the SABC. So what I would want to do, Chairperson, with your permission, just in the next 10 minutes, to give an opportunity to the COO as well as the CFO to just give us a glimpse of. We're not going to repeat anything that is said there. We'll take it that members have already read it. We'll just highlight the most pertinent features. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Through you. The mission for SABC is largely driven through the platforms, the 3 major platforms, which is radio, TV, and digital. From a radio perspective, the SABC has a healthy share of listenership across 18 radio stations, and of course the 19th one being Channel Africa, which is run by the SABC on behalf of the Department of International Relations. And that's in 7 languages, which includes Portuguese, Swahili, as well as French. And that has a listenership of about 28 million people, which is on average about 72% of the population. Television remains the medium of choice for most South Africans. At the moment, the SABC is managing 7 TV channels, and 5 of them are your linear channels on analog, and 2 of them are on DTT, which currently is being radiated through dual elimination. And we have a total of about 29 million South Africans who are engaged on that platform. The new platform that we're focusing on is the digital media platform. And here we're not only speaking about digital terrestrial television, but a huge focus is in the online space, specifically through the internet, which includes video podcasting and streaming, and I'll touch on that briefly. I just want to touch on the delivery of the strategy and the cornerstones of the strategy for SABC. If you look at the television channels as well as radio, most of the audiences are moving away from appointment listening or appointment viewing, and they tend to want to watch or consume content anywhere and everywhere, and therefore there's a huge focus on ensuring that we move rapidly into the digital space. And in order to do that, we are enhancing our internal capacities and agility to produce those kinds of platforms. And I'll touch on what we've achieved through a robust strategy. Most of this is geared really to transform and innovate the media environment to ensure that more South Africans are connected through any medium, anytime, everywhere that they want to in South Africa. In order to do that, or in order for the SABC to reposition itself, it has to focus on 4 major areas. And the first area, of course, moving to being the preferred broadcaster. The way that it does that is to ensure that it is accessible anywhere, everywhere. Most of the SABC can actually be accessed on your phone today through the news app, as well as a partnership of an OTT app, which has been quite an achievement through the strategy that's been implemented. We focus on plurality. That means inclusive of all South Africans in all the 4 corners of South Africa. There's a focus on ensuring that the business environment is conducive for competitiveness. So we lobby regulations, specifically sport, the must-carry regulations, and ultimately to ensure that we maintain interest for all South Africans. One's got to ensure that your content is relevant. We focus a lot on being the preferred employer. There's a huge focus on people, and I've got to admit at the moment, with the infrastructure that we have in the SABC, we tend to be failing some of our people, particularly in the buildings that we house them in, but there are plans to ensure that we overcome that. There's a refocus in our strategy on becoming the preferred brand. Each radio station has been re-energized on their brand so that the whole operational structure and objectives are geared on the brand and also brings efficiency into the way that we operate in the environment. I want to go now over to the strategic pillars, and we have 7 strategic pillars within the SABC, and I'm not going to go into all of the detail.
How many slides do you still have?
1.
All right.
Okay. I'm not going to go into all the details, so I'm just going to summarize up the 1 slide. I'm just going to go to that slide. I'm just summarizing the slide that you see at the moment, which is the strategic pillars that the SABC focuses on to achieve its strategic objectives. The first objectives the CFO will speak about, which is the financial stability, where she'll focus on or conveying the initiatives on cost savings, revenue opportunities, investment and cash flow. I think I've touched a bit on the initiatives around content and platforms, particularly in the digital space. I want to touch particularly on digital and 4IR. From a digital perspective, the SABC has been voted the best digital news app over the election period. In its first few weeks of existence, it had 25,000 people download the app. I brag because it's one of the most unique apps that exists in Africa, where you can watch the SABC live. You can also listen to all 18 radio stations. There's been a lot of talk on whether the SABC's moved to OTT. Yes, the SABC is on OTT. We've partnered with a company called View. So the flagship programs like your Zalo and Scheme Song are readily available to be watched on catch-up online. So we've made significant progress in that area, and most of that's been done through cost-effective savings in other areas of the business. Sorry. And Mavango, Chair, definitely. We're also moving into the digital space, not only in providing access for our customers to get access to SABC content via online services, but we're also moving into the digital space in the operations of the SABC business. And here we're talking about how we facilitate our processes within the SABC, particularly reviewing robotic processes. Hopefully we can also reallocate staff into other areas of the business, perhaps to generate revenue. We're also focusing on getting our people to be digital natives, where they interact with the SABC through digital. They can review the policies through digital. And a lot of our finance processes are already on digital. All of these, of course, will converge into big data systems, artificial intelligence, with the main aim of the digital pillar to ensure that our operations become effective, that we become predictive, and we can make quicker decisions within the SABC. The SABC also has one of the largest digital assets of any technology company in Africa, and that's done through about 18 websites and about 5 credible, good apps. And those apps and websites are now becoming interlinked to each other so that we can start gaining more information about our customers' behavior. And ultimately that translates to a more cost-effective organization and also presents opportunities where we can get additional funding models for the SABC. From a human capital perspective, we're also, as I mentioned, trying to get our staff to become technologically innovative in the way that they interact with the SABC. We're looking at innovative ways to do training. Just because you don't have the necessary funds doesn't mean you can't train your people. And the way we're doing it is the 4IR way, where we have 2 innovative areas to focus on online training, which is extremely cost effective. And it also trains people in becoming effective digital natives as we go through the 4IR evolution. We're also looking at effective ways of also managing our staff costs through the operating model for natural attrition, effectively managing contracted workers. So there's a huge focus, and part of that is what the CFO will talk about, but a lot of that is also contributed to the savings that the chairman was talking about. I'm not going to touch or go deeply into governance because the chair's touched on that. I just want to touch on partnerships. There's a lot of effective partnerships that the SABC is focused on. A lot of them I can't talk about today, although I'd like to because they're so exciting. But it's really there to enhance the experience for our audiences, and some of them we are being assisted by the Minister and the Ministry. Thank you, Chair. I now hand over to our CFO, who will be talking about the finances.
Thank you very much, Chairperson and members. Just before I talk about the APP of the FY20 year, I thought it would be appropriate to make a few comments on the impact of our strategy implementation in the past year approximately. It's important to note, I think cash flow being the topic of a daily conversation, we have managed to balance the cash between investing in content on an ongoing basis, paying our salaries, and ensuring that critical services remain available to the organisation. Our debtors days are below our targeted debtors days. We have made tremendous progress in the governance environment. We have we will hopefully be reporting here shortly when we come to reflect on this past financial year, reductions in fruitless and wasteful expenditure. We have made progress on recoveries in both irregular expenditure and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Our risk management process is fastly moving in the right direction. We have improved our asset management. The supply chain environment have changed the way it does content acquisition in future in an effort to ensure we respond better to our environment and remain well governed. Contract management has been enhanced. We executed the elections project as already referred to within the budget. We had 30 million rand which was available to us, which we self-funded, and I believe we will be reporting that it was within the budget. We are carefully optimistic that we will succeed in reporting an improved audit outcome. We've addressed 89% of the FY18 audit findings at this point in time, and the audit so far is doing well. It's in terms of the project plan. So
you said what percentage of the audit outcomes?
89%. Yeah. We have succeeded in responding to the previous concerns of the Auditor General with respect to going concern, as well as on the property, plant and equipment side. And then cost savings is another theme that has become part of a culture of cost discipline in the organization. We have literally targeted every single line item in our income statement and developed initiatives around it, which is not just a combination of savings or austerity measures in some cases, but it's also operational efficiencies. As such, we have reviewed the way we engage with sports rights. We are busy with an audit of our signal and distribution network, and we're working closely with our partner in this respect. We have reviewed the way we broadcast costs and have optimized it significantly. Numerous ITC savings are being materialized, and also in our radio stations and TV stations, how we automated processes. So all of these were outcomes, together with what the other gentleman reported, of how we believe we have succeeded in implementing our strategy. With that then as a background, because it serves as the opening balance, if you will, to the FY20 year that we're here to present to yourselves. In terms of financial numbers, and I'm on slide, we're not going to present the slides, 20. On slide 21, the operating loss that we forecasted at the time that we prepared the corporate plan was 480 million for the past financial year. We are here today to present an operating loss before finance costs and taxes of 648 million, and I will share with you the reasons for that number in a second. I just wanted to focus on some key highlights first. All the initiatives in our HR, human capital environment, is in process. Some of them we do believe we should see the financial implications thereof in the next financial year. We did have to assume that there is success in our funding engagements with our partners and shareholders. In this case, 3.2 billion relates to the current financial year, but the original application of 4.3 billion rand for a guarantee has been factored into the corporate plan. We had to bring in this guarantee, or the success, we had to make an assumption around the success of the guarantee, because failing that, our balance sheet would have been factually insolvent. And even then, our trade creditors have been and continue to accumulate, because over and above just the funding application and the success of having revising our funding model, we need the legislation to give us longer term sustainability. Key assumptions further then is we were very aggressive in the way we believe our commercial revenue will grow. I'll talk about that more in a second. The guarantee application assumes that we'll be able to successfully raise financing with financial institutions. It does come with a cost, so there's a significant interest cost. We do believe that the TV licenses can report a 1% increase. This is at this point merely as a result of various recovery measures and access to better databases. But in the future years, you'll see in our IPP further in latter years, we do anticipate potential increases. The salary increases is 6%, which is on the back of a 3-year wage arrangement. If we then look at what contributes towards the 648 million rand loss, and specifically how it moves from the forecast at that time to the budget, our sports rights currently realizes a loss of approximately 338 million. We did aggressively decide to pursue marketing initiatives because it is very necessary to ensure that the public and our advertising community is aware of the services we render. As such, we went in with a more than 200% increase in marketing. It's almost a 214 million rand additional to what it was actuals in the past financial year. So that's another component that drives the variation between the FY19 and FY20. We did have to invest, or assume we'll be able to invest in the backlog of repairs and maintenance that we're confronted with. If I move on, there's a slide about risks and uncertainties, but I've touched on a lot of them already, in the sense that, yes, we made assumptions around revenue and expenditure, but there are risks to each of them that they might not realize. There is still a declining audience share due to the fact that we do need money to be able to invest in content, and it must be fresh and attractive content. Currently, we're unable to do that. There are some uncertainties, but I won't further elaborate on that. If I'm on my slide 23, we then look at a little. No, sir. Just this one and the expenditure one, and then I'm done. With respect to the revenue, as you can see, the percentages I previously referred to, rather aggressive assumptions around increases. If you look at advertising revenue, the reasons why we are aggressive about that percentage increase, we anticipate that we'll be able to stabilize our audience share on the platform, but noting that it is dependent on compelling and quality content. We have some attractive trading deals that we're working on, and we will hopefully see the results in the next few months. There's a focus on our corporate and brand images improvement. I did refer to marketing investment, and also planning, a characteristic that the organization typically has not been able to successfully execute. We're going to work on that as well. So it's important to note that the advertising revenue, or the traditional commercial revenue, amounts to 77% of our revenue. TV licenses accounts for 13% of our revenue, and the next big line item would then be the government grant. In this case, the revenue of 225 million for this financial year, which is about 3% of our revenue. Operating expenditure, the big expenditure drivers is our investment in content. The top line is very much dependent on sufficient cash resources, our signal and distribution costs, and then our employee benefits and related matters. And then a little bit further, you can see the investment of nearly 214 million we hope to invest in marketing initiatives, which then brings our total expenditure base to about 8 billion rand. Then follows the balance sheet. I'm not going to stop on that. Suffice to say, on 25, you see the trade and other payables. The number reduces materially, but it is on the back of the assumption that the guarantee application is successful. And then maybe last but not least, the last two slides is really a little bit of key insights. I'm on slide 29. It gives you a graphical presentation of the organization's performance in the past 10 years and the future 3. And important, how we deducted that in the profitable years, which is 2012 to 2014, that the expenditure, the amortization showed a negative movement. And we then concluded also that as long as personnel cost trends at the same growth as your content amortization and your advertising revenue, will be unable to sustainably return to financial sustainability, and hence the aggressive assumptions in our turnaround plan. Slide number 30 really just wishes to illustrate the impact of the legislative changes, should they be successful, that we move from a net loss position to a net profit position in the course of the next two years. And that is my presentation.
Thank you, Chairperson. That's our presentation from the SABC side.
Members, we've got the operational corporate plan. This is the slide presentation of the corporate plan, which was backed up by additional information from the chair and the CEO. Thank you. Let's engage the report.
Board in Parliament there, as well as executives presenting to Parliament on a range of issues, including the SIU investigations that have taken place, over 38 investigations there, forensic reports produced by the SABC, over 180, the turnaround strategy, and the CEO talking about how there's improvement, but there needs to be a capsule injection in order to make sure that the SABC can invest in local content and produce local content and keep the broadcaster going. We're going to
to work hard to bring the SABC back on its feet, despite some very, very trying circumstances, and the board as well. And I think as Parliament, we must thank them for staying and doing this work. I think other people would have gone to the private sector and said, no ways, I don't have to live this life. So I think we must extend our gratitude for them, especially to the 4 board members who remained when the board was in court. They could have left and it could have been very, very difficult. So I think we owe them that gratitude, not only as Parliament, but South Africans. I would like to say the presentation has greatly improved from the last time we met with the SABC. We're very unhappy with the cost-cutting measures that you had presented before us. We're not happy about your efforts to attract advertisers, but I think what we have in front of us is, for me, it's pleasing. It's great to see that you have 1 billion in cost-saving measures. But as they say, the sky is not the limit. So if you can continue to drill down and save costs, please continue to do so. I would like to see more investment in local content, but I understand the financial problems that you have with that, because you need money to get local content and therefore viewers and therefore advertising. I understand that advertising is where you get your the most of your funding. I think the ultimate goal, as you've stated, is we'd like to see an SABC that is able to self-sustain. We don't want an SAA that comes every month with cap in hand. You must be able to self-sustain. So I would have very much liked to see the business model. The chair said I must say I, but I'll say we because we're a team. We could very well have inputs that we could give as the body that conducts oversight over you. So I think there must be an opportunity through your chair for us to see some of that business model, just so that we're satisfied ourselves that we think the SABC is going in the right direction. Just an update on the retrenchment of staff, because obviously that's an issue that a lot of SABC staff members are worried about. And then you talk about day zero, and every month we read about salaries not being paid, which is a human issue. It's not just about numbers. It's not just salaries. It's people. That's what I keep saying, that these are people whose salaries are not being paid. We can't speak about this in a flippant manner. It's individuals with mortgages, with kids they have to send to school. So if you could just give us an update on when specifically day zero might be, when the SABC goes off air, when thousands of staff could quite possibly lose their jobs. And from your side, since the minister, I wouldn't give kind of a sufficient indication of how far the discussions have gone with National Treasury. And I must be clear that we do not support a bailout. There's not enough in the public purse for a bailout. So we must be able to trust you with a guarantee. So that's why I think it's important to see the business model, because we can't support a guarantee and we don't know what we're supporting a guarantee for. Then you come back again in 3 years and you want more money. So I think it's important, Chair, that we see that. And then, as we discussed last term, we said it was important for you to give us constant updates about how the board is doing, how relationships on the board are going. Because last time we were the committee of filling SABC vacancies. Please, can we not be again the committee of filling SABC board vacancies? It was enough last time. So can you just give an indication of how the board is doing, if there are any areas of concern? If there's issues of confidentiality, I don't think there's a problem with you emailing members of the committee, including the chair, to let us know where possible red areas are, so that we can deal with them before we have to fill yet another vacancy. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Chair. My first question to the APP for SABC, I'm just asking, having 73% dominance in the radio makes SABC a monopoly. How is SABC using its dominance of the radio space to support its financial viability? Then the second question, what are the plans to recover losses of TV viewership and to become more competitive? Then lastly, Chair, seeing that the SABC African language radio station, for an example, Ukhozi Mhlobo Wenene, as we have mentioned, are doing so well, how is SABC planning to enhance the quality of programming to grow the African languages market? Thank you, Chair.
Let me give Member Majosi, who didn't say anything in the previous discussion, and then Member Madisha, and then Member Mulala, and then Member Gumbo, you're okay. Yeah, just oppose is one round only, and then we go to the next agencies.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, honorable members. No, my question is on the APP. I just wanted to know if maybe we will get a comprehensive report in terms of the operations when they talk about the process of rehabilitation and that there's a significant progress. We want to see all those things because now it's at a high level. We have not explained what is the rehabilitation and how is the process going, so that we know that when we help as the committee, then we come in and help and see the programs that are in place in terms of this rehabilitation and the significant progress that is there, so that we can compare the two of where is it now and where are we going from here. So that is all, Chair. That is all I wanted to ask. Thank you.
Member Madisha, Member Mulala, and then Member Gumbo, and Member Mtembu.
Yeah, thank you, Chairperson. When I move out of this hall, beyond the borders of the Parliament, and members of, rather the owners of SABC, South Africans, ask me, what is the problem? I will say that I'm confused, because you realize that in the morning we've been boxing, fighting here and so on. But then I truly cannot understand. I thought that you basically had collapsed because of the, the finances, what you wanted, etc. But there is a contradiction, I must say. If you kindly could indicate, there is a contradiction, really. You are saying, yeah, there is an improvement, we are moving forward, etc., etc. The only problems are around the issue of the building. Yes, I have seen the buildings myself, whether it's Auckland Park or in the other provinces. One has seen that. The problems that are there, and even at some stages when workers, were literally refusing to go to work because of the fear that at any time those buildings could collapse. I want to believe that that is a crisis, and I had hoped that we'll come here and say, we have a crisis, and you, government or Parliament, as the main shareholder here, will not just give us 9%, but will give us more to make sure that we are able to survive. But I don't hear you say that. Albeit we rose, I think, was it last year, and said that we recommend that the minister government must do something to even increase the percentage that the SABC was getting. Now, I'm not getting that. Hence, I'm saying there is a contradiction, really. Now, the other point is reallocation of staff to other areas to generate, was it revenue? Yes, I think that is, I'm putting that in quote. That is what the COO, I think, said, okay? If you kindly could explain, because one truly does not understand. The CFO says the government contribution is low, and one wishes to repeat that. It's 9%, but then we are growing, financially. And I think that is what the chair spoke about, billion, etc., etc. Then if one were to say to these members, can we close this thing and say there is no problem with SABC? Will you agree with me? Because that's exactly what I am not, understanding. If you kindly, if it is feasible, Chairperson, explain exactly where the problems are, because I haven't heard at all, where you say, here we have a problem, except that the building may fall at any time, but then we have grown financially. Here, the issue of the workers, they'll only get 6%, but we are successful. And one will say 6% is too low, please don't give them that. But then more so that you have a lot of money and you are succeeding. Can you kindly explain? Thank you, Chairperson. Okay.
Member Mulala.
Thanks, Chair. I wanted partly to agree with Honorable Madisha, except for the fact that there is a debt of 1.9 billion that I heard of. But when you listen to the broader presentation, the impression created is that things are fine, we are growing. We managed to move from 400 million to 680 million. I may not be exact on the figures, but my interest is on two issues. The first one is in one presentation there was information about a commercial part of SABC, which you said some of the information is confidential. I understand we are many here, but possibly to members it should not be that confidential. So I hope Chairperson will note that, and so that we have that information. The other part, because the reason I'm raising that is because it will still be in the public interest to know what is it that is confidential, that is not disclosed, blah, 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 The second part is on the, when the Chairperson presented the 3 pillars, I'm interested in the first one, the legacy and governance, because you gave a little bit of a background where SABC comes from, and you did mention a number of reports, though you did not go into details. I would be interested in future to know the details of that report. If you say some have been suspended, some have been done this, actually how far are you? What was the level of damage in terms of human capital? How many people were implicated in all those processes? How many so far have been charged and so on, so that we know exactly how far are you? Because there's so many reports, ad hoc committee, public protector, SIU, all those things. at some point we may need a breakdown, but not in today's meeting, so that we know exactly how far are you, so that the impression is not created that, no, yes, we are doing something, we are moving out, but we don't see results. And then we'll say, no, government, please intervene, pay, we pay, but we don't see progress in terms of movement. Thanks, Chair. Those are the only two issues that I was interested in.
Member Mtembu and then Member Kumu.
No, Chairperson, I'm covered by the presentation of the COO.
Thank you, Chairperson. I'm also covered by the Chief Whip. But Chairperson, I want to share with the House that as Zuluini sivamisa ukuthi masivuka ekuseni sithi Nkosi ungisize usathane angami endleleni yami. Senzela nje ukuthi usuku luqhubeke kahle. But Chairperson, I was having a question. That's the context. Chairperson, my question was that what can be done with the SABC itself to identify opportunities for growth while they are waiting the injection from the government side? But then I've heard that they covered that portion by saying they are partnering with many stakeholders. I think that is covered. Thank you, Chairperson.
Give the responses. As members have said, we're going to continue engaging on the SABC. It will remain on the agenda and other entities.
Thank you, Chairperson. Maybe let me start with Honorable Madisha's question. Indeed, we have a crisis. And the reason why, when you look at the income statement or the P&L.
I just want to check. The DDG, there was an issue I asked him to talk about the area. So I wanted to check, is it linked to this report or is it general input on the area of financial challenges? Is it the entire, for the department as a whole, or is it linked to this one?
Thank you, Chair. I had been requested to update the committee on where we are with respect to the SABC funding. So.
At 1500 Central African time, very good afternoon to you. We're going to come out of...
No, I'm just saying, because in terms of the sequencing.
I think we would want to do it at the
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Thank you, Chairperson. So, as I was saying, Honorable Madisha, indeed we do have a crisis. And the reason why it doesn't seem so when you look at the financials is because we have a team of committed employees at the SABC with the required competencies and leadership skills to ensure that the SABC in the past 12 months has been kept afloat. The second point is this. We have a situation where the expenditure, month on month, it far outstrips revenue. So we have to delicately manage our cash flow on a monthly basis. And we cannot continue like this. Hence, we said the critical need to have capital injection into the SABC. So the only reason why when we present or when you see these statements, it doesn't seem, it is because of the dedication of all of the SABC employees who, despite all of the liquidity challenges, are working hard to ensure that we avoid a black on air situation. Then there was another question about why are we not sharing the business models as well as what we're proposing. And obviously we're going to follow the right governance channels, and members will be privy to the information in terms of what we want to do going forward. But once again, if I may emphasize, this is commercially sensitive, and it will help us as we go forward as the SABC. Then there was the other question in terms of what exactly are the issues. The biggest issue here is the funding model, which does not talk to the SABC's business model. As I said earlier on, we generate revenue through commercial engagements with different agencies and partners. However, owing to the unfunded mandate, it's putting a lot of strain on our P&L. If I could give you the projections, in the next 3 years, we're going to spend about 6.8 billion on the unfunded mandate, and in the past 3 years, we've already spent about 4.8 billion. So those are some of the issues. Then the other point that I may highlight as a cause of concern is the lack of investment in local content. We had a meeting with our clients and agencies yesterday, and this is the issue that they're highlighting. We have 19 radio stations and 5 free-to-air television, but the content in those platforms is not as fresh, and it does not help in terms of driving eyeballs and increase the advertising spend. So the other issue is that we are looking into dealing with all of the legacy issues. And I think it's important for members to know that the SABC has not been profitable in the past 10 years. The only years where SABC was profitable is 2013 and 2012. And in those years, there was no investment in content. So we want to ensure that we pump in a lot of investment in terms of content so that it can generate enough revenue to take us out of our financial rut. I would then want to ask, then there was another point that was mentioned in terms of what are we doing on the irregular appointments owing to the legacy issues. Chair briefly spoke to this. These are some of the things that we're dealing with, and we are also engaging with the relevant stakeholders in doing so. Salaries are a big issue because what we have decided to do is to prioritize it as a line item. But what it then does, because we're prioritizing salaries, it then takes away from the importance of investing in content. We cannot pay our suppliers. As a result, they cannot provide us with the required content that we need. So not all is well. It is a crisis situation. The only reason we've been able to keep the SABC afloat is really because of the commitment and the dedication and the competencies of the employees of the SABC. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chair. I will add to what the CEO said. The infamous day zero, if it is equated to the day we can't pay salaries, the 3-month forecast at this point in time, pending the continued support of our trade creditors, does not indicate that we'll be unable to pay salaries. But we're unable to invest in content, we're unable to invest in marketing, we're unable to do the critical maintenance and repairs that's necessary on our buildings. The success of a funding intervention, if I can put it like that, is a key component of this corporate plan that is in front of the honourable members today. Without the 3.2 billion, we cannot execute any of the numbers that you would have seen here. We really just limp along, literally. That is what we do. On the question around rehabilitation and renewal, if I look at the specific bullet, I think it speaks to the broader governance and internal control environment and our turnaround strategy and everything that relates to that. And there will be an opportunity that we will come back and go into great detail to show you what we believe is how we're rehabilitating and renewing our organisation, speaking to all the themes that we touched on today. With respect to the government grant, sir, that is a specific purpose grant for education programs, for Channel Africa, and for production programs. So it is an engagement between ourselves and the department where specific items are identified, and on the back of that we secure funding for those specific items. I think those were the main ones that I can add.
Thanks, Chair. I want to start responding to Honourable Madisha's question around generating revenue from other areas of the business. If you look at the SABC currently, about 48% of its expenses goes to employees. The world benchmark for a media company sits around 23%. And the percentages I quote is a percentage of revenue. So if you want to start breaking even in that environment, you either got to push up your revenue or you have to reduce your staff. So the areas that I'm talking about of repurposing the staff that we're currently reducing in certain areas of the business is actually to retrain them and repurpose them in the areas of 4IR and digital. So one of the areas specifically from an operations perspective that we focus on is creating value for paying your TV license. So most people don't pay their TV license because they don't feel they get value for their TV license. But what we're doing is we're building digital applications behind a wall, and those things are typically getting access to digital news, getting access to podcasts, music of the day. And if you put in your TV license number, you can get access to this whole suite of new types of products just by paying a TV license. So that's where we're starting to build new divisions within the IT and digital strategy of the SABC, and that's where we will be repurposing people. From a question was asked about the SABC's dominance in radio, particularly 73% in radio across 19 radio stations, but it does not necessarily equate to the commensurate revenue. There's a specific focus on increasing revenue under the current operations strategy, and it's a robust strategy that focuses specifically on creating new opportunities for events for radio stations. We're creating new packages that are being done in conjunction with our commercial enterprise partners in radio particularly. What had happened in the SABC, there's been a huge cross-functional gap. We're closing those gaps, and those gaps are actually equating to increases in revenue. And we're finding that the behavior of people listening to radio is also moving to the online space, where they particularly focus on podcasting. And that's an area of attracting people onto your websites. And next to those podcasting sites, we're already working on creating malls. That means that if you go to a radio site of the SABC, you could be purchasing all sort of other things to increase our funding as well. So we have plans for that in place. Some of it does require a bit of investment, but we look at all avenues to try and fund this. Another question that was asked by Honourable is what's happening to losses on TV viewership. I just want to add on to what the CEO has mentioned. Most of our losses in viewership relate to content over prime time, because that's when the SABC makes most of its money. And whilst we're not spending on content, our competitors like ETV and DSTV are spending on content. And if they have more compelling content, you'll find that your audiences start moving away. At the moment, the SABC enjoys the top 3 programs in the country. I think that's a significant achievement under the conditions that the SABC operates, but it's not sustainable to maintain those top 3 audiences. And that does include Muvhango, Skeemsaam, and Uzalo. The other question that was asked was around enhancing quality for the African market, African stations. The SABC as a media operator is unique in that it talks to all 11 official languages, including Khoi and San languages on XKFM, which I'm particularly interested in. And what we're starting to do is we're starting to move our associated websites into the vernacular. So if you look like at Zalo at the moment, you now have a vernacular option to go into it into Zulu. And in that you can start accessing and enjoying the true benefits of the website, but also gaining access to podcasts. The other thing we're also doing with our radio stations is a refocus on brand association, because there's been a veer away from what the actual brand represents. And if you lose the brand, you lose the audience, because our radio stations are very much belong to communities. And in most areas of South Africa, you'll find that our people believe that the radio station in their particular region belongs to them. Then from a cost perspective, sorry, I forgot. One of the other things as well is we learn a lot and we get a lot of feedback about our linear radio stations as well as TV through Twitter, social media, Facebook, and we take all of that information and we actually do something with that information. From a cost perspective, besides the people costs being quite high, there is also a focus on the costs of certain content, and here I'm particularly speaking about sports content, and a huge focus is around ensuring that we become very transparent around the content that we buy, particularly for soccer. Then the last one that I want to answer particularly looks at opportunities for growth and confidentiality. I think we're always going to be confidential around specific strategic initiatives, because we have to be mindful that although we're the public broadcaster, our funding still comes from a competitive environment, which is DSTV and ETV. And if a lot of those trade secrets are out there in the market tomorrow, they pursue strategies that's counterintuitive to us. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chair. I am just going to try and give a very quick update on where we are with respect to the funding for the SABC. But as I do so, Chairperson, please allow me to just map out a little bit of a background as to where we are, at least how we see where we are as the department. First of all, I would like to explain that whenever an application is made for a government guarantee, it is usually expected to be premised on a credible turnaround plan. In other words, the entity is saying, this is the financial tight position I am in, this is how I'm going to trade myself out of my position. However, I require interim funding from a financier, which is usually a banking institution, to help me out of this hole, and this is how I will trade out. Therefore, really to take a decision on the government guarantee, you need to be persuaded that the turnaround plan is indeed credible and workable. So in our assessment of the turnaround plan, we had concerns, and I need to say this. One, of course, like any other SOE in difficulty, we have pressured revenues, we have costs that are overrunning, and in some instances, like in this case, we have creditors that have not been paid, hence the accumulated debt. So we're saying we really need to come up, therefore, with a turnaround strategy that talks to these things, such that if you approach any financial institution, they will see how you are trading yourself out of your critical position. So now when we then say, from our view, we need a turnaround strategy that truly talks about, amongst other things, how has technology disrupted broadcasting as a service, and when you start to tease, how technology is impacting on your business, you then are forced to design an organization of the future that talks to new technologies and so on. It cannot be business as usual or as it used to be. So we're saying we want to develop an SABC which responds to the technologies and therefore an entity of the future. In that way, we will then create a new business model which will talk to what kind of content do we provide, how do we provide that content. This is so important, especially in a context where the so-called OTTs, over-the-top platforms, are essentially eating the lunch of the traditional broadcasters. So your new strategy really needs to tease these kinds of innovations and how they impact on your business and how you can harness some of these into your operations. On top of that, then we say once your content strategy is right, then you can start attracting audiences, you can start attracting advertising revenue. Then the story starts to balance. But also, the Broadcasting Act talks about the distinction between the public mandate as well as the commercial mandate of the SABC. And it even continues to say we shall account for these things differently or transparently, and the commercial business will subsidize the public mandate business. The preliminary information we have is that, that kind of intended subsidization has not occurred. In fact, the subsidization could be happening the other way around. So in relooking this business model, we really need to refine what is public mandate, how do we fund the public mandate. But if public mandate so happens to develop revenues of any kind, those ought not to be gobbled and swallowed by the commercial aspects of the business, which unfortunately may not be profitable. So those are the kind of things that we are trying to deal with, and therefore we are saying, having done all of that work, we then need a new organizational structure, and then we need to talk about doing business right, issues of corporate governance and compliance. Having acknowledged, therefore, these shortcomings as the plan stands, as the Minister indicated, we have then employed the services of GTech in Treasury to help us deal with these issues and then develop a new plan. In terms of our timing, we say this plan should be ready by latest September. Now, if this is the situation we are sitting with, then it means we have a unique or a very uncommon guarantee application, because you are acknowledging yourselves that the turnaround plan is not final, it's only going to be final in September. So how do we deal with the cash crunch of the SABC of today? So the meeting that the Minister referred to then between ourselves and Treasury is that meeting that deals with those aspects then, Chair, that if the credible business plan is going to be finalized in September, how do we assist the SABC, until September to deal with its challenges? And then we will devise a funding plan going forward after September. So that is where we are. Chairperson, we are all in touch with each other, National Treasury and the SABC on an ongoing basis on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's do South African Post Office. Is still around? Oh, I was looking for you there.
Good afternoon, Chair, Honourable Minister.
Yes, I thought.
I thought, just to be clear, he said that more must be done or rather presented to them urgently by SABC so that something can be done be or by September. I just wanted to have that so that I can note that. Did I understand that? I'm sorry to waste your time, Chair.
Interim measure and the one post-September going forward. I think that's the part you want. Member Van Damme, just also raise you.
If I'm just trying to clarify that, we are working with the SABC being assisted by GTech, stands for the Government Technical Assistance Center in Treasury. It's almost a consulting wing of the Treasury that assists government deal with challenging issues. So they are assisting us to put together a turnaround plan for the SABC, which will be finalized in September. But whilst we are doing that, we are acknowledging the challenges of today of the SABC. And I'm saying that is what the meeting of tomorrow with the National Treasury is seeking to address. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. I want to clarify something so that there is no confusion. The team has just presented some of the outcomes coming out of the turnaround strategy that we are implementing. The R1 billion that we've been able to save is the outcome of that turnaround strategy. The positive things that people are noticing and saying, you look like you're doing great, is the outcome of that turnaround strategy. But what has happened with the help of the shareholder was to basically submit that turnaround to the GTEC team just to enhance it. So the notion that there is no turnaround strategy is wrong, and I'm not going to let that one go without being clarified, because then what has kept SABC running for the past 12 months? That's the part that I wanted to clarify. But there was a question also that was asked around the board and the workings of the board. Ordinarily, boards need to be guided by the best interests of the organization. They need also to be informed by the facts and reality of the organization. Now, when new members come together, it takes a bit of time for them to develop as a team and get to a point where they are working correctly. I mean, I heard the Honorable Chairperson saying this is your first meeting, they may be having some teething issues there and there. So as a board, we're going through those kind of phases, but I'm confident and positive that we'll get it right, because there's one common thing that should guide all of us: what is at the best interest of the SABC, where we find ourselves as the SABC, and what is required of directors of the board, and making sure also that we work well with the executive team, giving them enough space to implement the strategy and holding them accountable. So that's all I wanted to clarify. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Chairperson.
We can, it's almost now more than an hour. Let's go to the post office.
Thank you, Chairperson, Honourable Minister, Deputy Minister, Honourable members of the Portfolio Committee, DGs, colleagues. I'll be brief. I'll try and give some space for others that follow me. The strategic purpose
All right, it looks like we've lost the link there to